So in today's web dev tip, we're actually going to insert a document into our Mongo database from the previous endpoint that we'd set up when we're generating a short URL. So in yesterday's tutorial, we connected to the database, but we didn't really do anything with it. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to insert some documents into the database with the connection that we've just set up. So there's a couple of things here. So yesterday's tutorial, we created this connect to database function, which is fine. And we got the collection, which is kind of like the table where we're going to be storing all of the short URLs. But the problem is that this variable here is scoped locally to the connect to database function because we've got the const declaration here. And we want to use it down here in this app.get endpoint that we've created. And as you can see, if we try and access collection, it will just say that it's undefined at the moment. So there is a way that we can pass this collection object between the different routes in our Express application. And I'll show you how to do this in a later tutorial. It'll just make more sense when we're splitting out all of our endpoints into separate files. But just for the ease of use and simplicity here at the moment, I'm going to say the collection variable is equal to the db.collection again. And I'll just define that as a globally scoped variable up here in the main.ts file, which means that it should be available to us down here in this short URL endpoint. So what we're going to do is actually call the insert function on this collection to insert a document into the database. And if you saw the tutorial a few days ago where we did this on the command line, it's pretty much the same function and the same format. It's just we're doing it through our Node API now. So let's call the insert function on here. And we just need to pass in an object that we want to write into the database. And we're just going to be passing in this object here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it from our JSON response. I'll just make sure I get rid of all of the stray curly braces there. So here now, instead of returning that as a response to the user in the browser, we're just going to insert it into the actual MongoDB collection itself. Now, there's a couple of things here. This does return a promise. So what we can do is make this an asynchronous callback in the Express endpoint. And then we can just say the insert result variable is equal to the collection.insert function, and we just wait for the response from that. And instead of returning res.json with the URL as we did before, we'll just return the insert result just so we can see that in the browser and see what sort of response MongoDB is giving to us. So if we save that, we're pretty much done. There is just one thing that we need to update. So in yesterday's tutorial, when we connected to the database, we actually just closed it straight away here in this finally block. So I'm just going to remove that here for now, simply because we don't want to close the database connection immediately. We want to keep it open while our Express app is running. So there you go, there's how you insert a document into the MongoDB database. Let's go ahead to the browser and let's just go to the endpoint. And as you can see, we're just hitting that short URL endpoint. And if we hit return, you can see now that we've got the response from MongoDB saying that it's been completed. And we've also inserted an item, a document into our collection. So there you go, you can see that's working all okay. There's just one final change that I'm going to make to this endpoint, and that is that although we're actually getting a short URL, we're actually creating a resource in the database now. So the app.get, the get HTTP verb, doesn't really make much sense here anymore. It should technically be a post endpoint. So post is generally used for when you're creating a new resource. So I'm going to change that to app.post. Of course, that means it won't work just by browsing to the URL in the browser anymore, but in the next tutorial, I'll show you how you can test this with a tool called Postman, and we'll send a request just to check that our API is still working, even though we've changed it to a post verb. So that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.